says of who's registered.
So we don't have any indication of who's signed in?
Not yet.
Okay.
And I think also it's people write their messages, not speak them.
Okay. All right, because there's no audio input for them.
I don't think so. Welcome, everybody. I see that there's about 5 of you joined. That's great. We'll get going here in a few minutes. Just sit back and relax, and we'll get started here in a second. It's all brand new fancy webinar component here. You should be able to, if you want, in the chat, there's a little chat button where you can write a message to us if you like, or a question. We'll try to get to those as we go along. But as I'm noticing, looks like about 9 people signed in. That's great. I'm Carlisle, by the way.
And this is Dr. Miller.
They can't hear you at the moment, but I can turn, let me turn.
Well, maybe let them know that the only way they can talk to us is through the chat box.
Well, your mic is up now.
Okay. How are we for time, Carlisle? Is it time?
Not quite yet.
Okay.
We're still waiting for people to get on. So,
good. Yeah, and there are usually going to be some people that are needing to register too at the last minute. They may be a little late. So we won't say anything important in the very first few minutes.
Only really uninteresting things, we'll say.
Well, they can be interesting. They just don't have to be important.
Well, okay.
This is Dr. Damon Miller. I just want to welcome the people that have shown up already. This is our first webinar with this new software platform that we're using called Webinar Jam. So, we hope this works really well. I believe there is as Carlisle mentioned, a chat box. I think if you wanted to just type in hello or just kind of get used to that, that's really the only way I think of communicating with us. That's how you're going to enter questions if you have them, or comments. So feel free to use that. And Carlisle will be moderating the questions. He'll be, kind of taking them in the order they come. But I'm I'm just grateful for the people that have shown up. Thank you for coming. This is going to be, we'll take as much time as we need. I doubt we'll go over an hour, but we'll have plenty of time for all the questions you have and for me to say what I want to say here. I guess if we want music, we're going to have to sing. Isn't that right?
If you want to do that to them.
That got mixed.
Oh, okay. We have people saying hello. Great. Bruce and
Hello.
Pedro and Sobha. And hope if I pronounced it wrong, please help me correct it. Joanne, Beverly Gray, welcome everybody.
Yeah, looking at the people who'd signed up, I recognize some of the names. So some of you who are on this know me a little bit, know something about my attitudes, my thoughts about food, but I'm glad you came, and I'm going to be looking to you to really ask some good questions as we go through this.
And hopefully it sounds like from all the monitors and things that the sound is looking okay, and looks like the image is there, so that's good. We have slides. We'll kind of be jumping back and forth between slides and Dr. Miller. Too much echo. Okay. Let me see how to remedy that. I think. Sound is not okay. Okay. Part of the problem is that from here it just gives us sound is okay, so it may be that may be, is there sound? I hope there's sound. I hope you can hear something. Pedro is asking if there is sound. I hope that there is.
Well, yeah, we're talking. It's about time to begin, I think. So why don't we begin, and we can do a little question about a sound check for people.
We have about half the folks who registered, but if we just get started, then people can catch up, I'm sure.
Yes, and this is being recorded. So if you miss any part of this, you will be able to come back and listen to it. So it's. So
do you want to?
Yeah.
Do you want to? So I'll just. There we go.
Hello. Today it's Thursday, the 7th of May, 2015. I'm Dr. Damon Miller. I'm your organic MD, and today we're going to be doing a talk just on healthy eating. It's a big topic, and if you have no idea what healthy eating is, then boy, you're in the right place. We had kind of thought of a format for today for this webinar that we're just going to talk about the 3 things that I've seen that are important for a successful eating plan, no matter what style of plan you're using. And we're going to be going through those 3 things. But this is a webinar. This is an interactive thing. So I'm really looking for all of you who are on with us to give us your questions, let us know your comments, and really participate here. I know this isn't like a conference call. It's not as easy as just speaking something into a telephone. You will need to type in that little comment box. Um, but Carlisle is here. And so Carlisle, why don't you say hello? You're acting as helper engineer and all around make it happen guy here.
It's nice to see everybody in the little dialogue box here. It looks like most of you have gotten the message thing figured out. And I'm not quite sure, a couple of people are having kind of double sound. I'm not quite sure what that is. It may be something on your end, because it seems like other folks are okay with the sound. Pedro is saying that there's no sound at all. And I would say that maybe again, a piece of you haven't turned the volume up, or there's something not turned on your end, since other people are hearing the audio. So I don't quite know what to tell you there.
Yeah, and one thing you can do, just a little troubleshooting, step back from the webinar for a bit, see if there's sound coming from other things, play a sound file, put a headphone into your computer. Sometimes that works better. Make sure, like Carlisle says, that you don't have the volume turned all the way down. But we will, and these internet things are just notorious for being a little squirrely. So
I don't think I've ever had one of these that something didn't go strange. So we're sorry. The good thing is that this will be recorded. You'll all get a link to this. You can watch it on your own time. So hopefully that will work if it doesn't work right now.
Yeah, often the recording works a whole lot better than the live stream. But right now we're in the live stream, so let's take advantage of that. So again, so Carlisle, say hello. You just kind of introduce who you are in this. People don't know you as well as they know me.
Well, my name is Carlisle Koash, and I, for the last 16 years, has worked as a counselor in end-of-life work primarily, and in palliative care, so helping people make kind of complex decisions at complex parts of their lives. Before that, I did and still do professional theater and performance and things like that. And Damon and I have been friends for about 10 years or so. And we've been working together, collaborating on Organic MD, and him as the doctor and me as the sound / tech / web person / counselor. So lots of hats.
Yeah, and if you ever go to our webpage, organicmd.com, and read the articles there and find yourself chuckling, blame Carlisle, because when I write things, they tend to be maybe a little droll, but kind of dry. And he really livens up just about everything we do, which is why I'm glad that he's involved in this. So, so why don't we dive in? I'd said there were going to be 3 things we were going to talk about. And like I say, the theme of this webinar, where we're going, will be certainly shifted and guided by the questions you submit. So if I'm saying something, please enter questions. Carlisle will moderate those. But talking about the 3 things that are most important to have a successful eating plan. And when I say successful, what I mean is an eating plan that will serve you for the rest of your life. An eating plan that will allow you to live a long, healthy life, free of disease, with everything working. Some of the ads that we put up, we had some ads on Facebook, and we got kind of mixed response to those. It was how to live to be 100, or do you want to live to be 100? And there were some people who they responded to that and they came back and said, yeah, tell me more. How do I do that? And there were other people going, oh, it's just a depressing thought. Not everybody's meant to be 100, or I'm not sure I want to live to be 100. And yeah, that's kind of an interesting thing. We didn't quite expect that. But I don't mean that everyone needs to live to be 100, but I have been a doctor for over 30 years, and I can tell you that there are things worse than death. People worry some part of them worries about dying, but being sick or ill or incapacitated, losing your autonomy, those are all things that you can live for many years with, but it's not very pleasant. And what I found really is that diet is, number one, it's something you have total control over. You have complete control over what you eat. And it can have a huge effect. And this is something you don't hear a lot about this. I mean, you hear a lot of people talking about eating. You hear a lot of people talking about dieting, usually in terms of weight loss. But what you don't hear is that what you eat, how you eat, is probably the most important thing you can do to maintain your health. And if you're ill, it is probably the most important thing you can do to restore health. And so that old adage or that old saying from grandma, you are what you eat. It is really important, as important today as it was ever. So the first thing I want to say, the first thing,
Shall we go to the slides?
oh yeah, let's go to the slides. We got some slides here just so you don't have to be looking at me the whole time. Let me know when those come up, Carlisle.
So you on number 1?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first thing, the first secret, as I call it, that you need to know for a successful eating program is learning about which foods your body doesn't like or which foods you're sensitive to. There are different ways, different words to talk about that, and then completely avoiding those foods. Now, what do I mean by this? A lot of people say, well, I know I'm kind of allergic to milk. And so they go out and they try to find maybe lactose-free milk. Maybe that'll help. Or they don't drink milk, but they eat cheese and yogurt and ice cream. And they wonder why they're just not 100% healthy, why they're not sleeping well, why they're irritable, why their skin has problems, why their hair is falling out. And these foods that your body doesn't like, they're like poisons. And if you eat them, it's like eating poison. And so if you know that there's a food that at some point in your life you've had a reaction to, even if it was when you were a child, if your mother has told you, oh, you had this terrible milk allergy when you were a child, please don't be eating cow dairy or anything made from cow dairy for the rest of your life. It is amazing what that will do for you. And then if you don't know if you have any food sensitivities or if you're not sure, there are a couple of foods in the last 10 years that have proven to be really problematic. One of those is wheat, and one of those is cow dairy. There are a lot of, there's actually an abbreviation, especially in pediatric diseases. A lot of parents, kids that have pediatric problems, they discover what's called the GFCF diet, the GFCF diet, G for gluten, so gluten-free, CF, casein-free. Casein is the major protein in milk that tends to cause a reaction in people. And that's one thing about the milk. It isn't the milk sugar. It isn't the lactose. So you can buy all the lactulose products you want, lactose-free products you want. The lactose isn't the problem for most people. It is a problem for some, but it's the proteins. It's the proteins that really cause the inflammation and the irritation in milk. And some people can tolerate goat's milk and not cow's milk. Some people do better with no dairy at all. And the only way that we can go to slide 2 if you're not there.
You mean for, okay.
Yeah, the second slide on this, I think there was a second one.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Yeah. The only way you can really figure out if you are sensitive to dairy or to wheat, and I'm talking here from almost 20 years of experience of taking people off these things and seeing how they do. The only way that you can figure it out is to have a period of time where you don't eat it and have a period of time where you're completely 100% free of it and see how you do. And if you're not convinced from giving it up that you're doing a lot better, add it back in and see what happens. Now, this experiment only works if you do it 100%. It isn't a question of degree. You can't be having a bagel every now and then and saying, well, all I'm having is a bagel every Sunday. That doesn't work. And there's a lot of good data on that. And I'm proposing to you that you do this as an experiment because there is no lab test that's 100% accurate in determining if you have a sensitivity to a food. There is no skin test. The lab tests are notoriously inaccurate, meaning most often what happens is they have no sensitivity. You can have a terrible problem with the food and the lab test will say you should have no problem at all. But if you give up the food, you do better, but the lab tests say you have no problem. This has led in the last couple of years. Back in 2014, there was a major conference, and people from all over the world came together, and they basically gave an official stamp of approval to a new diagnosis. And that new diagnosis was called non-celiac gluten sensitivity, non-celiac gluten sensitivity, or NCGS. And what does that mean? Well, most of the time, doctors would tell you that the only people who had a true sensitivity to gluten were people with a disease called celiac disease, or sprue is the old word for it, celiac sprue or celiac disease. And it turns out that there's a whole world of people out there that have serious problems when they eat wheat, and they have no evidence of celiac disease. So they're non-celiac gluten sensitivity. And I kind of interchange the words gluten and wheat here, because 99% plus of the gluten you're going to be exposed to is from wheat. And it turns out there are some qualities to modern wheat that are, well, let's just say wheat may not be the best food for human beings anymore. Wheat is not a GMO crop. They haven't introduced foreign genes into the wheat genome, but you can modify a plant quite a lot by selection, and so what they've been after for wheat for 30 years now is a species of wheat that is very highly productive, resistant to certain diseases, but mostly high yields. And so there's been a move in wheat, modern wheat. No longer, if you go out to a wheat field, you don't see amber fields of waving grain anymore. Now what you see is this little 18-inch high cultivar that produces almost twice the yields that wheat fields used to produce, twice the wheat yield per acre. But the wheat that's produced has less than half the protein that wheat used to have. It has 50 times the gluten, and it has over a dozen new proteins in it that are more reactive than gluten. So one of the problems is that when your doctor orders some kind of a test to see if you have an allergy to gluten or an allergy to wheat, those tests don't even test for the proteins that are in modern wheat, which are very inflammatory, causing a lot of reaction. So there's so many reasons why your body is the gold standard when it comes to which laboratory to use. Go ahead.
Just turning on my mic a little. Bruce had a question about ghee, about the product ghee.
Okay. Yeah, well, so let's move. So that's kind of the story on wheat. And let me just say, to finish up wheat, it's not on the slides, but there have been a couple of books in the last couple of years which are very informative. Both of them are by physicians in private practice. One is a book called Wheat Belly, and it's by William Davis. He's an MD, and he's kind of a family practice. And basically, the book tells of his journey of taking hundreds and hundreds of people off wheat and the surprising results in terms of the improvements in their health that he saw. And the other book is a book called Grain Brain. So wheat is a grain. So Grain Brain, like brain your noggin, Grain Brain, by Dr. Perlmutter. And he also is talking about people with serious neurological disease, including things like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease and things like that. And that these people, a lot of the people with seizures, Alzheimer's, tremors, all this kind of stuff, all he did was take them off wheat and they got better. Not just a little better, like better, cured, better. And both of these authors, Dr. Perlmutter and Dr. Davis, spend some time in their books talking about these qualities of modern wheat, the wheat that is very different than the wheat of 100 years ago that our great grandmothers ate, and why it is turning out to be such a disastrous food for human beings. And before I go to Bruce's question about the ghee and talking a little more about dairy, we've got something we're going to try. We're going to do it real quick. Carla, can you pull up the first poll?
Sure.
Okay, this is just a poll, and it has to do with weight loss. And we're just kind of I just want to have a sense of what people's sense of weight loss is, and you'll see the questions. What's more important? Is exercise most important in weight loss? Is it eating, how many calories you eat? Is it what kind of foods you eat? And so just ask you to play along with us here and just answer the question on the poll. Your identity will never be revealed. We will never talk about anybody who's on that. And let me just say that we do have your interests at heart. There's nothing in this webinar that's ever going to be revealed in terms of who was on it or anything like that. We do respect your privacy in this. And so we want you to feel free to come forward with your questions.
You should be able to, hold on. Should be able to do the poll. It's over to the, I think to the right of your screen. Now, maybe it's because you just taught everyone so well, but so far we have 100% response for what you eat.
Well, okay. Well, that's going to certainly skew those who haven't answered yet. But let me.
Well, I don't know if everyone has answered.
Okay.
It doesn't tell me.
But let me go on to Bruce. So the question about dairy, again, like I say, the issue with cow dairy, if it's an issue for you, the issue is going to be with the proteins. And this is just a general rule. The things that cause an immune reaction are almost always proteins of some way, shape, or form. So sugars do not really cause an immune reaction. Proteins cause an immune reaction, an inflammatory reaction. And butter, for a lot of people who don't tolerate dairy very well, they can eat some butter. There is some protein in butter, but if you take butter and you remove the milk proteins that get stuck in the butter, you end up with something that is just the butter fat. And that's called ghee, G-H-E-E. And it's very commonly used in Indian food, Southeast Asian food. Because it doesn't have the proteins, it tends to be pretty stable. So you usually find it in a jar, not in the refrigerator case in the store. And it's become more mainstream. We have Trader Joe's here in Northern California where we are, and you can buy ghee at Trader Joe's. And so ghee is just the butter fat, not the proteins. And for most people, that would be an acceptable thing to use. We're going to talk a little about fats later, but ghee is also very nice for cooking. One of the reasons Western people use clarified butter is that once you take the proteins out, the butter will tolerate a higher heat without burning. And so it's used more for cooking. Butter makes a very nice fat for cooking because it will tolerate the heat and it's already saturated, so you can't damage it with heat. Carla, do we have what you think is the final thing on the...
Everyone voted for the same thing.
What you eat. Okay. Well, and so here's the reason I framed this as a question about weight loss. People who are trying to lose weight, they count calories. They worry, oh, I can't try and lose any weight right now. I'm not in a place where I can exercise. Just last year, there was a long-term study that was published. Exercise has almost no bearing on weight. I know that sounds surprising. Exercise is important for your health. You definitely want to be exercising and moving your body parts around and getting your heart rate up and doing aerobic exercise, kind of pushing yourself a little bit. That's really good for your health, but it has a trivial effect on weight loss unless you're exercising like an Olympic athlete. If you're spending 6 hours a day in the gym, yeah, then that's gonna have some effect on your metabolism and your weight. But the way most people exercise, it's the least important thing. Calories turn out to be the least important too. I'll tell you a story. I've got a lot of stories about this. I'll just tell you the most recent one that I had. I had someone who had come to see me, and just to keep the story short, they were having some health issues. Their immune system was a little overactive. They were having allergies, skin problems. And one of the best ways to calm down your immune system if you're having skin rashes and sinus problems and allergic reactions and cough and all these things that are just a stirred up, overreactive immune system is to remove the other things in your life that might be stirring up your immune system. And the one, like I say, it's not that food causes all problems, but food is the one thing we have total control over. And so you can remove from your life the foods that are likely to be stirring you up, and it calms things down. And all these other problems that people have also calm down. The skin rashes go away, the sinus problems go away, the coughs go away. And we talked about all these things, and this person was very honest. He goes, well, doc, all these things you're asking me to do. The one thing, I don't really use much in the way of cow dairy. I don't eat ice cream. I don't put cream in my coffee. I wouldn't miss that at all. That would be easy. Let's just say I'll do that. And they went away for the summer, and they didn't have any dairy at all. And they came back and they lost 25 pounds. They weren't counting calories. They weren't doing anything else. They lost 25 pounds, which they kind of needed to lose. They weren't really overweight, but they were getting a little chunky, and they lost 25 pounds. All they did was change what they put in their mouth, not anything else. They just eliminated one food that was inflaming them, causing them problems, and they dropped 25 pounds. So thank you for participating in our little poll. We have another one or two of those coming up. But we'll kind of leave that. We'll go on. Should we go on to secret 2?
Yep.
Okay. I think we have a slide for secret 2 as well. And again, this is, let me know when that slide comes up.
Should be here in a second.
Okay.
It's a little delay.
No, that's good. And again, you don't have to wait for me to pause. If a question comes to you or comment, just go ahead and type it in while we're talking here. Carlisle will moderate.
Okay.
Okay, good. So the next secret has to do with how much and what kind of fat you eat. So the secret is simply eat plenty of healthy fats. And I included this one for this talk. There are a number of things we could have talked about. Fats are really a hot item these days. And it's a hot item because a lot of energy is being spent trying to undo 30 years of bad advice. The bad advice was don't eat fat, fat-free diet, heart-healthy diet, low fat, no fat, all of this stuff. And that turns out to have been very misplaced, misguided advice. And so how do you see it now? It's not a clear program, but for instance, one of the things that's a big thing now, and we even included an image of it in our one of the little Facebook ads we put, is everybody's really hot on coconut oil as a fat. And you would think, reading the kind of articles and things that are being posted about it, that coconut oil is just the be all and end all of medicine, that it's going to cure all ills. It's kind of the modern snake oil. There's nothing that coconut oil won't do for you. And it's true. Coconut oil is a good fat. It has a lot of monosaturated fats in it, mostly monosaturated. Monosaturated fats, also found in olive oil, tend to be very anti-inflammatory. Coconut oil tastes like coconut, so you can't use it for everything, but it's good to cook in. One of the things with cooking, heat can modify certain vegetable oils. It can cause the formation of trans fats. And so you want to be careful about cooking in oil, even olive oil. Olive oil is a mix of monounsaturated fats and omega-6 essential fatty acids, but it gets modified with even the lower heats used for simply sauteing some green beans. And so you create trans fats. So you want to be careful about cooking in oils. And we'll talk a little more about the oils that are good, but fats that are already saturated, like coconut oil or ghee, those things tolerate the heat better, and you don't create unwanted products just by the heat of cooking. Coconut oil, though, isn't all that magical. Coconut oil, palm oil, these different things, they're great fats. They're good to use. And they're a good way of getting enough fat. The other thing that is kind of been changed is, there's every 5 years, there's a mandate from Congress for the Department of Health and Human Services, the DHHS, and the Department of Agriculture to create or update a list of recommendations on healthy eating for Americans. And so every 5 years, they review the literature of the past 5 years, what's important for healthy nutrition, and they come out with a set of recommendations for a healthy diet. And those recommendations formed what through most adults remember the food pyramid. The food pyramid was sort of a very nice graphic. It was used in schools and eating classes to give you a graphic representation of what a healthy diet should look like. And the recommendations for what consisted of what was in a healthy diet changed radically in 2005. And so before 2005, the food pyramid showed the base of the pyramid, the foundation of a healthy diet was mostly breads and pastas and grains and things like that. And at the very top of the pyramid, the tiny little pyramid at the top, were fats and oils to be eaten in moderation or not at all. And then in 2005, they finally realized, oh, this is not so good. Why are fats important? Well, let's see. Fats are what make up the membranes in our cells. Fats are the raw materials that make up all of our hormones. So the building block of almost all of our important hormones is cholesterol. And if you're not eating some cholesterol, you're probably going to have hormone problems. And wouldn't you know it, hormone problems are an epidemic in adults, especially older women. But it's a big problem in men as well. So, so now the pyramid has been turned on its head. So current recommendations are that you should be getting about 1/3 of the calories you eat should come from fats, healthy fats. Now, the recommendations don't really tell you much about what a healthy fat is, but we're going to give you a little bit of information here, and there's a lot of information on our website at organicmd.com. If you just search up fats, there's a little search bar at the top. But 1/3 of your calories. Now, one thing to realize, this is just a little bit of, this may not be intuitive, but an ounce of fat has over twice the calories as an ounce of carbohydrates or an ounce of proteins. And so fat is much denser in terms of the calories. So the volume of food you need to eat isn't as great to get the same number of calories with fat. So it's not that 1/3 of the volume of all the food you're going to eat is fat, but 1/3 of the calories you eat should come from fat. And this can be things like oils in salad dressings, mayonnaise, nuts, seeds, oils we pour over vegetables that we've cooked or add to dishes that we've cooked, fats that are in, some of the meats we eat and things like that. So it isn't really hard to get 1/3 of your calories from fat, but you want most of that to come from healthy fat. And a lot of the healthy fats are that are most important are the essential fatty acids. In nutrition, that word essential always means you have to eat it because you can't make it. So essential vitamins, essential amino acids, essential fats, those are things that you have to eat because you can't make them. Now, our diet has become a little skewed in thanks in part to the modern agricultural practices. So for instance, the fat, if you were to, when I do testing, I don't do a lot of testing. I don't do testing in everyone I see. But if I were to do testing, the one thing that is usually low in people is the omega-3 fatty acids. And the omega-3 fatty acids are remarkably absent from our modern diet. Omega-3 fatty acids have some disadvantages in terms of processed foods. They tend to be a liquid at room temperature. They tend to spoil very quickly. So they're not good to put in packaged foods. You'd end up with rotten, spoiled, greasy bags of cookies on the shelf if you made them with omega-3 fatty acids. But it's even more insidious than that. When chickens and cows ran around the barnyard and ate grass and weeds and bugs and whatever they could find, cows were out in the pasture eating grass and flowers and whatever they could find. All of those things they were eating had a lot of omega-3 fatty acids in them. So the meat or the eggs or the chicken meat had a lot of omega-3 fatty acids in it. But now most chickens are fed corn, cows are fed corn in the months prior to their being slaughtered. And so the fatty acid composition in the meat or the eggs is all omega-6 because corn oil is 100% omega-6 fatty acid, no omega-3. And so to get the omega-3, you have to go looking. Now, fish is a great source of omega-3. Fish has its own problems. The oceans have become quite polluted. There's heavy metals and other toxins in fish. But fish is still overall a good food. You want wild caught fish. And the smaller the fish, the lower on the food chain it is, the less concentrated are the toxins and the heavy metals that we worry about in things that live in the ocean. So I still encourage you to eat things like the small mackerel, herring, sardines. We have a question?
We have two.
Go ahead.
I think they're connected. Maybe three. Bruce is curious about sunflower oil, sesame and rice bran oil.
Mm-hmm.
Soba is asking about avocado oil.
Mm-hmm.
And Shona is asking about Siberian pine nut oil. She said, I've read some good things about it and have been taking it every morning.
Okay, good. Well, just to keep the answers to this simple, all of those oils that were named are good oils. And one of the things that is a part of looking at the oils you eat and thinking about the oils you eat is, I'm going to introduce a new idea here, is what is the ratio of the omega-6 in the oils you eat to the omega-3? And it isn't hard to figure that out. To do it, you need to kind of keep a log of the oils and fats you eat during a day, count up how many omega-6 there are and how many omega-3. Now, why is this important? This is important for some theoretical reasons, but there's a lot of very practical things that have been studied that show the importance of this. So omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids are both essential. We have to eat them both. We need them both. Unopposed, omega-6 fatty acids tend to be inflammatory. Unopposed, omega-3 fatty acids are very anti-inflammatory. If you're eating omega-6 and omega-3 in the proper balance, they balance each other out and you end up with a kind of neutral, non-inflammatory mix of oils. And there's some discussion about what would be the ideal ratio of omega-6 to omega-3. Some people say 3 to 1, but I push people to work towards 1 to 1. For every gram of omega-6 fatty acids you eat a gram of omega-3. And one of the reasons I do that, some of the more compelling evidence that I found, is if you look at cultures around the world, and I'm going to get to the answers, specific answers to these questions about the oils, but I wanted to put it in a context. If you look at cultures around the world that are naturally long-lived, people live to be 100 years old, they have all their hair, they have all their teeth, they're sexually active, they're walking up and down the mountains, they're chopping wood and carrying water. Those cultures, the one common denominator among all of them is that the intake of essential fatty acids, omega-6 and omega-3, tends to be in a ratio of about 1 to 1. And that's a pretty compelling bit of information. And it's interesting because one of the places where you find that is in the Mediterranean. So there was a book years ago called The Mediterranean Diet. And most people, it's sort of interesting to me, it's just a little touchstone. If I say, if I say to you Mediterranean diet, what do you think of? And most people, their immediate answer is olive oil. And yeah, it's true. They eat olive oil. They have beautiful olive oil in the Mediterranean, but they use it rather sparingly. It's a very valuable thing. And they don't cook with it so much. They do some, but mostly they put it on salads and they pour it over their foods after they're cooked. But the reason that the people in Sardinia are living to be 100 years old and being quite healthy is because they eat sardines 3 times a day. Fish is in every single meal they eat. And their intake of omega-6 to omega-3 is 1 to 1. But that's not the message that people take away from the data on the Mediterranean diet, is how important the fish and the omega-3s are. So just to come back, sunflower oil it's a very clean oil. It tends to be. You can get organic sunflower oil. Oils in general, I propose, should be organic if you can find them. The sunflower oil, though, is mostly omega-6. Pine nut oil has a little bit of omega-3 in it, but it's mostly omega-6. What were the other?
Sesame.
Yeah, sesame, mostly omega-6.
Rice bran.
Rice bran, mostly omega-6.
Avocado.
Avocado is a mix like olive oil of omega-6 and monosaturated fats, a lot of monosaturated fats. And again, the monosaturated fats, they're not essential, but they are very anti-inflammatory, very good oils, very tasty oils too. So those are all good oils that were named, but then the question becomes, where are you going to get the omega-3s in your diet? And so that really becomes the piece of work. And so that's where the attention needs to be. That's where the effort needs to be in terms of how are you going to do this? Because to be honest, if you're going to do this, you really want to do it in the kitchen. You don't want to be eating omega-3 oils all day long, eating everything is sunflower oil and avocado oil, and then downing a handful of fish oil pills before you go to bed so that your ratio ends up 1 to 1. That's not going to work. So you have to figure out how to pull these things in. And some oils that are high in omega-3 are flax oil, hemp oil. Those are the 2 best. Walnut oil is about 25% omega-3. One oil I do want to just give a special shout out to is canola oil. And the shout is, don't use it. Canola oil is, well, first of all, almost all of it is GMO. And why do they use GMO canola oil? Because you can spray Roundup on it, which is glyphosate. So all of the oils that are from canola oil, almost all of them are laced with glyphosate, which it turns out is pretty toxic and damaging and hurts your DNA and causes cancer and things like that. But also people think it's good because it has a little bit of omega-3. True, it does. But not only is it mostly omega-6, which is inflammatory, but it's made from mustard seed. So canola is mustard. And if you've ever had a grandma who ever put a mustard plaster on you, you realize just how inflammatory that stuff is. I did this experiment once. I think, Carlisle, we need to make a note. We need to do this again. I just basically painted some canola oil on my arm, put some saran wrap around it as an occlusive dressing, and left it there for 12 hours. And my skin was almost blistered. And so, do you want to be eating this stuff? No, you don't. The other oil I encourage everybody to avoid is cottonseed oil. Cotton is one of the most heavily sprayed crops that you can imagine. And so the cottonseed oil is very contaminated. It's all very dirty. It's very cheap because the people who make the cotton will almost give it away just to get rid of it. So avoid cottonseed oil as well. And so that's about enough on the fats. So again, and also these, like I say, it's like I said about the coconut oil. There are a lot of articles being written now praising, boosting this oil or this fat or that fat. And just understand the context. A lot of that is happening because there's a very concerted effort right now to undo the bad advice of the last 30 years, where fats and oils have been demonized. And so praising these oils in every possible way, you would think they were, magical things. They're not. It's just to try and change the tone of our discussion and our understanding about fats and oils, especially when it comes to what we eat. So, none of these are that magical, but they're oils that do have some qualities. Borage oil, evening primrose oil, things like that have certain qualities. But for the most part, I'm encouraging you, think about all those qualities that you want, but please pay attention to the percentage of your calories that come from fat. Pay attention to the ratio of omega-3 to omega-6. And in the coming weeks, we're going to be doing a lot more with food. We'll be talking about that. But in fact, we do a healthy eating workshop. Do we have a slide for that? Do we have a thing?
We have a little, just a thing for a sign up for it.
Yeah, if you want some information about that, please do that. It's basically a 6-week course that we do. It starts this Sunday. It's a virtual course. It's basically training videos. So there's a lot more in there about the fats if you're interested in that. But it's a play along kind of program where we ask you to eat a diet that doesn't include grains or simple carbohydrates or sugars or dairy, and do that for a number of weeks with some support, the support of the class. And there's a forum, and the other members in the class support each other. And but try that for a number of weeks. Do that trial that I was talking about with some support and see how it feels. And you will be amazed, I promise you. And we try to make this something that is available, and you don't have to come to class. So there's some training videos or educational videos and a conference call for the next 6 weeks.
And also at the end of the webinar, we do have a discount for those who've attended the webinar. A little bit of discount on the workshop. So
good.
So we'll show you that in a bit.
Okay. Any other questions before I move on to the kind of third secret here?
No. Shona had asked a bit. Shona had asked about borage oil, and you kind of mentioned it.
Yeah.
And then Erica was asking what you thought was the cooking oil that had the most omega-3.
Okay, well, that's an easy one. There is no cooking oil that has any omega-3. Omega-3s are far too fragile and unstable to heat. They all are degraded and actually turned into things that are rather damaging to us in the process of heating. So you don't want to be cooking with omega-3 oils. But you can cook, for instance, you could cook some vegetables by steaming them or poaching them, cooking them in some kind of broth, even in just a small amount of broth in a shallow pan and a lid on it. And then when the vegetables are cooked, then put something like walnut oil or flax oil or hemp oil, pour it over them, kind of almost as a dressing after they're cooked for the flavor and the texture. But don't heat those oils, please. And the oils that are probably the best, that was one, I think that we had one question about, one that I didn't touch on, rice bran oil. It is mostly omega-6. Rice bran oil, the Japanese use it extensively for stir frying because it has qualities that are very resistant to heat. You can heat it to almost 475 degrees and it doesn't degrade. It doesn't form trans fats. And so it's a very excellent, excellent oil for cooking. Now, rice is one of those products or one of those crops that is genetically modified. So that your oil isn't full of glyphosate and Roundup, use organic rice bran oil. It's not impossible to find. It's a little more expensive. It's well worth it. We do have it here in the office. If you live at a distance, though, you can find it on the internet pretty easily. You find it even at Amazon.com, organic rice bran oil. Yeah, another question.
Well, Erica was also asking, how much flax or hemp oil do I have to eat to get enough omega-3?
We're going to, like I say, in the next couple of weeks, and Erica, I know, is actually going to be following some of this over the next few weeks. So there will be handouts to help you calculate that. But I'm not going to, it's too complex to do in something with an audio format like this, but not as much as you would think. And here's the thing too, just as a concept, some of you may get this, some of you may not. If you've got a brain for numbers, you'll get it. But if you've got, if you're eating a certain number of grams or ounces of, say, sunflower oil in your salad dressing, and then you've got whatever omega-3s you eat in the part of the ratio that's under the line. Well, if you move some of the calories from here, so instead of making your salad dressing out of sunflower oil, you make it out of flax oil, and you've done an exchange where you've moved these omega-6 calories now to the denominator, so the ratio shifts dramatically, even though you're not eating any more oil. You've just changed the makeup of the oils you do eat. You can change the ratio rather dramatically just by doing a few exchanges like that. So, but we talk a lot about that in the healthy eating course. But don't feel bad if you don't get it now. I did want to go on though, just to our third, we're getting close to an hour here, but I want to just talk about secret number 3. So can we pull up the slides for?
They're all set.
They're all set, good. The final thing is just about, really the essence of this conversation is about insulin resistance. So if you're going to be eating a diet that's going to serve you for the rest of your life, it's no secret that you don't want to be eating a lot of sugars. The thing that a lot of people don't understand is you also don't want to be eating a lot of simple carbohydrates. So what are simple carbohydrates? Well, I've had numerous people that I've seen over the years who have been treated with conventional Western medicine. They've been seen by nutritionists and dietitians to advise them on how to eat so they don't hurt their diabetes. And they've been told that popcorn is okay. So they're eating a big bowl of popcorn every night. Well, the starches in that popcorn have a higher glycemic index than pure table sugar. You could eat a spoonful of sugar and not raise your insulin as much as by eating a couple of handfuls of popcorn. So simple carbohydrates have a name called monosaccharides. Mono meaning one, saccharides meaning sugar. Those monosaccharides have a big effect on raising our blood sugar level. Sugars certainly have a big effect on raising our blood sugar levels. And there's been a huge amount of press in the last year or two about sugar. Some municipalities, cities, states even thinking about taxing sugar, reducing the amount of sugar that's available in convenience stores and things. And it's a whole hue and cry about, well, you can't, control what people eat. But the essence of it is to understand that if you eat and have eaten for many years a kind of standard American diet, which is full of sugars, full of simple carbohydrates besides popcorn, just things like potatoes and white rice and bread and grains, all these things are full of simple carbohydrates, that by eating those foods, you've been running around with a higher blood level. To control that blood level, your body's had to make a lot of insulin. So you've been running around with high insulin levels, and therein lies the problem. Because insulin is a complex thing. Insulin is a hormone. Insulin has 2 major roles in the body. Insulin is important to control your blood sugar, but insulin also is a hormone that has a regulatory function, and that regulatory function, the regulatory function that insulin has, doesn't work very well if there's too much insulin around. So the body gets really frustrated. You keep eating a diet with a lot of sugars and simple carbs, raising your blood sugar level. You need a lot of insulin to keep your blood sugar level under control. The whole metabolic control regulatory thing that insulin does gets completely flummoxed and messed up. And so the body has no choice, because you won't change the way you eat. The body down regulates your response to insulin. You become resistant to insulin. That's the only response that the body has to keep things working. Unfortunately, when that regulatory part of the body, which has the upper hand, it has the control, when it down regulates or makes you resistant to insulin, insulin doesn't work as well to control your blood sugar, but you keep eating the same way. And now it takes even more insulin to control your blood sugar because you're insulin resistant. And you become even more insulin resistant so that the regulatory function, and you can see how this is a cascade that just builds until what finally happens is you can't make any more insulin. Your pancreas is making all the insulin it knows how to make, and it's still not enough insulin. And that's when you see the doctor and they tell you you're diabetic and you've got insulin resistant type 2 diabetes, and you have to start shooting up insulin. The only way to make things work is you're making all the insulin you can, and you have to shoot up insulin. And this is something that people don't tend to understand. People think I'm shooting up insulin because I don't have any insulin. No, you're full of insulin. You got insulin coming out of your tears and your sweat and your pores. You don't make enough insulin to control your blood sugar because you're so insulin resistant. And this is where the conversation gets really interesting, because the diseases that are killing us all, atherosclerotic disease causing heart attacks and strokes, diabetes, obesity, even osteoporosis, some cancers, hypertension, those diseases are essentially caused by too much insulin. They're the result of too much insulin. Insulin in large amounts tends to be rather harmful. Now, if you don't believe me, just go to PubMed or go to, look up the connection between insulin and heart disease, insulin and hypertension, insulin and glaucoma, insulin, on and on and on, insulin and all these things. And you will find the data. And it's become such a hot topic that some of the biggest funding in Silicon Valley, which is where we're located here, the next thing after computers is all of the bioscience. That's the big new thing that venture capital is investing in. And there's been some huge investment looking for drugs that will modify insulin, because it's now recognized that too much insulin resistance is what's killing us off. And so how do you deal with that? Just don't eat so much sugar. Just don't eat so many simple carbs. It is so easy. I have a kind of grim title for a book I want to write, which is Diabetes is a Disease of Choice. And I don't say that in any way to be cruel to people who are diabetic or disrespectful, but I have not had a person who had type 2 diabetes that we couldn't get them under control and off the insulin just by doing a radical change on their diet. And I mean a radical change. You have to do much more than what the dietitian at the hospital tells you to do. So that's the other secret, is you can't be eating it. And, some of this goes back, we talk a lot about this in the healthy eating workshop. So if you're interested in learning more, please come to that. But, this goes back to work that was published in the 80s and research that went on for 20 years. So from 85 to 2005. And there was a period when all this research was being published when you could not open a magazine or a newspaper in 2005 and 2006 and not see some new study that had been published showing the problems caused by excessive amounts of sugar and carbohydrates in the standard American diet. And then more recently, some work at Berkeley, where basically they're saying sugar is in essence a toxin. And you have to remember that alcohol is treated by the body as a sugar. You have to remember that the sugar in fruit, fructose, it's just sugar. Maple syrup, agave syrup, honey, they're all sugars, and you have to eat them in great moderation or not at all. So it's, and then the worst ones are the chemically processed sugars, the high fructose corn syrup and that stuff is just, that's got to go. If that's in your diet, get rid of it. So, those simple things can do a lot to reduce inflammation, relieve arthritic pain, back you out of autoimmune disease. I know these sound like wild claims, but this is what we do in this office all the time. We work extensively with diet. People get better. We don't use drugs. We don't use pharmacy unless we absolutely have to. And diseases that are supposed to be completely untreatable and uncurable get better. And often the most important intervention we do is we change a person's diet. So I just want to go back. You want to do poll number 2?
2 or 3?
Let me see here. Excuse me a second.
We're on 3.
Yeah, let's do 3. Well, no, people know that. We just talked about all that. That would have been a better one to do before. The poll, let me just say, is elevated levels of hormone insulin is associated with diabetes, heart disease, stroke, hypertension, obesity, or all of the above. All of the above. So let's do number 4.
Okay, hold on a second.
Okay. We'll just kind of end with just a little bit about protein here.
Okay.
Okay, so there should be a poll up on your screen, just 2 questions. Which has more protein, 2,000 calories of broccoli or 2,000 calories of hamburger? Da, 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 da. So do that. And Carla, if when that's done, if you want to put up the thing for the healthy eating workshop again, and we'll talk just a little about the discount.
Well, the offer for the workshop is up already.
Okay, good. Good.
It's a smart crowd.
Yeah, what did they say?
We'll get your answers in here. I don't know how many people have actually chimed in.
Okay, well, we'll give it another minute. So anyhow, we're kind of talking about the healthy eating workshop.
Here we go. Oh, it's getting more exciting.
This class that's coming up is something we've done for 17 years. And it's really, the purpose of the class is just to get you to eat differently for a few weeks. Because I know if you will do it and just do it all out, really put yourself into it for just a few weeks, you will have such an embodied experience of feeling better that you'll want to keep doing it. But you've got to get through those first few weeks. And that's the hard part. And you've got to do it. It really works best if you do it 100%. So when I talk about giving up wheat and giving up dairy, I'm not talking about, playing around with it. I'm saying give it up. And so we give you a plan that's got, this is what you eat for breakfast. This is what you eat for lunch. This is what you eat for dinner. These are the between meal snacks you eat. This is where you find the food. It's all real food. I shop mostly in this area in Trader Joe's and the farmer's market. And to do this plan, I shop mostly at Trader Joe's and the farmer's market. There's no tricky foods, no special foods. There are a few supplements that we recommend. People worry about the cravings. The cravings don't happen. You're not hungry all the time. There's no limit on how much you eat. So if you are hungry, eat more. It's a really good plan. But the thing is that you don't need to give up wheat for the rest of your life. You need to give it up for a few weeks and see if it's real for you. And if it's real for you, you will feel it as an embodied experience. You'll feel it in your body. And that's what will keep you going. You'll look at a piece of bread or a bagel or a pizza and you go, I don't want to eat that because I don't want to feel the way I'm going to feel when I eat that. So I'm not going to eat that because I feel terrible when I eat those things. And I know it because I had that experience where I gave it up and then I added it back in. So I encourage you to do the class if you're interested. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, it's hot in here.
Yeah, so the poll, I think everyone's chimed in. So we had 73% said broccoli and 27% said hamburger.
Okay. Well, the reason I put these questions up there is that there's sort of a misconception. Every food contains protein. And the question, it's a little tricky the way it was asked here about 2,000 calories. So not which has more calories, a pound of hamburger or 6 pounds of broccoli, but equal calorie counts, equal amounts of calories for broccoli or hamburger. They're about equal, really. And the point is that you could get pretty much all the protein you needed just eating vegetables. So vegetarians aren't crazy. Vegetarians are getting the protein they need. They need to mix sometimes certain foods together to get all the essential amino acids, but you can eat a very satisfactory diet. And again, we talk a lot about that. I will tell you that the diet plan that we use in the healthy eating workshop, it's easier to do if you do eat some animal protein, some eggs and some chicken and fish and things like that. But it can be done if you're a vegetarian. So that was kind of the purpose of that question. It was a little tricky. We didn't give you the option 3 that they're equal.
So we have a couple other questions.
Yeah, go ahead. We'll take a couple more
and
questions.
we're at about an hour, just so.
Yeah, so we'll take a couple more questions and then we'll wrap it up. Oh, wait, before we take the questions though, can I just say something about the discount?
Yeah,
Okay.
I just loaded it up there.
Okay. Yeah, no, so there, if you do want to do this course, there's a discount of $50 off, and the discount code is healthy May.
No, hold on. It's the code is webinar attendee discount.
Oh no, I think we changed it to webinar May.
Well, not. Oh yes, I'm sorry. Webinar May.
Yeah, so webinar May with the W capitalized and the M capitalized, all one word strung together. So W, capital W, and then lowercase EBINAR, and then capital M and lowercase AY, webinar May. Just enter that, and that'll take $50 off here.
Yeah, just ignore on the little image. It says code and it's the wrong one. We forgot to update it there. But the orange button that says webinar May, that will help. That will get you the $50 off.
Yeah. And, you know, you can always write us there's ways to communicate with us on Organic MD. If you get lost or having troubles, just go to organicmd.com and use the contact form to send us a message. But what were the other questions?
So Soba wanted to know how do vegetarians get their omega-3?
Mm-hmm.
Then Gloria was asking about peanut oil. And then Bruce had a question about, can you eat too much protein that is greater than 100 or 120 grams?
All very good questions. So vegetarians getting omega-3s, that's a good one. Well, the oils I mentioned that are rich in omega-3 are all vegetable oils, flax oil and hemp oil. So that's probably one of the easier ways. There are certain species I'd said you want to avoid grains. There are things that we think of as grains that are actually seeds. So things like quinoa, certain species of quinoa have some omega-3 in them. And then there are things like borage and other plants that have omega-3. One of the supplements we use in the Healthy Eating Workshop is borage oil. And it isn't so much because it's an omega-3 oil, but it's conjugated linolenic acid. And it's a form of omega-3 that whether you eat meat or vegetables, often it's not in your foods very much. People don't go out and munch on borage all day long. But it's very easy to get the omega-3s from vegetables. Some of the omega-3s, there are different kinds of omega-3s. The omega-3s that are really deficient in many people are the longer chain, the omega-3 oils that are 20 and 22 carbon long. So most people who are not vegetarian, they would get those long chain fatty acids from fish, sardines and other small fish that are still reasonably clean on the planet, or you can find them that are reasonably clean. But you have to realize, in the same way that I was saying that, cows who ate grass and chickens that ate grass and flowers and stuff, they had omega-3 in them. Well, the only reason fish have omega-3 is because they're in a food chain that begins with algae. And so that's why you want your fish, if you're going to eat it at all, to be wild caught. Because if your fish is on a fish farm and it's getting fed Purina fish chow, it doesn't have much omega-3 in it because it's not eating much omega-3. But one source of the long chain omega fatty acids, if you're vegetarian, and we use these in people who are vegetarian, and in our eye treatment program, we do a lot of work with retinal disease. And those omega-3 fatty acids are really critical if you're trying to regenerate and rebuild a retina that's been damaged by something like macular degeneration. We tend to use, for most people, a very clean fish oil that's high in DHA. That's the 22 carbon long omega-3. But if they're vegetarian, we just have them take algae oil. Most vegetarians are quite comfortable eating algae. Vegans will eat algae because algae is basically a plant. But the world's source on the entire planet, the factory that makes all the long chain omega-3 fatty acids is algae. So either eating oils made from algae or eating foods that are in a food chain that begins with algae, you're going to get those long chain fatty acids. And what was the other question, Carlisle?
Protein.
Oh yeah, Bruce asked about eating too much protein. Yeah, you can eat too much protein. Too much protein is really hard on your kidneys. And so, there's been a lot of work. A human being, if you're eating very high quality protein, which could be from meat or chicken, it could also be from just carefully balanced plant-based proteins. But if you're eating, um, all you really need is about 30 grams of high quality protein a day. The recommendation is somewhere between 60 and 90 grams. That's from the from the Department of Agriculture. But that's always a fudge factor. That's assuming that a lot of the protein you're eating is not of high quality. But 30 grams of high quality protein, this has been studied and studied and studied again, is plenty of protein for a human being. And that's not much. That's about an ounce of lean turkey meat, if you want to put it in perspective. So a sandwich with 4 ounces of turkey meat on it, that's 4 times the amount of protein a human being even needs for the day. So yeah, too much protein definitely can be hard on your metabolism, hard on your kidneys. It tends to make you acidic. You want your body to be a little more alkaline. So we do discuss acid-base balance. We discuss proteins, the nature of proteins, how much protein, why protein from animals versus protein from plants. That's all things we discuss in the course. So again, if you have an interest in knowing more about that, I encourage you to come to the Healthy Eating Workshop. Was that the last of the questions? Okay. And so if okay, well, that's good. So those are basically the 3 things. Just to recap, if you know a food is bad for you, don't eat it. Eat a lot of fats and oils, about a third of your calories at least. Some people say 50% is better. And stay away from sugars and simple carbs. And you're well on the road to a long and happy life, free of disease, free of inflammation. Everything works. You live as long as you want. So that's the quick and dirty lowdown. I do really encourage you, if you have any interest in the class, to come and join us. Again, it's a virtual class. There are some very, very nice educational videos that we've put together. There's one of those each week, and a conference call where you join us, ask your questions, share how it's going for you. And there's also, as part of the course, a forum, a place where you can ask questions, interact with other people that are in the course, and a lot of handouts, just a lot of really good information. It's our 17th year, like I say, doing this. It's been remarkable to me what happens to people when they just spend a little bit of time playing with their diet. It changes them for the better. So come, please join us in the Healthy Eating Workshop. And our website, again, organicmd.com, has a recent article about the workshop. So all the links and everything of how to join are there. You had a link on the screen for the webinar. The webinar has been recorded. You can come back and listen to any part of this you want. And I'm done. I have nothing more to say. I just really thank you all. Thank you for coming and joining us. There's a final question.
We do have a final question.
Go ahead.
Soba has asked.
Soba, thank you. You're asking some great questions.
Yeah, this is so many good questions today. So this is not a question related to oil or protein, but are fruits bad for diabetes?
Yeah. Quite simply, I would propose to you that if you're diabetic, you want to keep your consumption of sugars at 20 grams a day or less. And a medium-sized apple has 30 grams of sugar. So you can really push your insulin levels up and get in the way of your own recovery if you're eating a lot of fruit. And remember, in terms of the diet that people ate long before there was agriculture, I mean, it's only recently that you could get apples 12 months out of the year and watermelon at the same time of the year that you get strawberries. And, just everything's been turned on its head in terms of agriculture because we, have planes and can fly everything around the world. But, our ancestors didn't have access to fruit except for maybe, a couple of weeks when a fruit would be in season. But most of the year, they weren't eating concentrated sugars. They weren't eating fruits. And yes, eating too much fruit is terrible for you if you're actually interested in reversing diabetes. It's sugar. There's no difference between fructose and glucose in terms of what it does to your insulin levels. So yeah, eat too much fruit. The fruits that are not so bad are the berries. There are low glycemic index fruits like blackberries, raspberries, blueberries. Those, if you're going to eat fruit, those are the best ones. Okay. Well, if that's the end of the questions, I think that's the end of the webinar. Thank you all again for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much. And if you have more questions or something else pops in your mind, just email us, and
Hmm.
we'll get back to you for sure. And thank you so much for your attention, and we just really appreciate all the questions. And I did take a note for Shona and Bruce, so no worries there. We'll make sure that we apply that discount for you. And yeah, maybe we'll see you all in a few days next week when the course is started. So thank you.
Thank you.
Is Erica registered? I registered Erica. We're sending out a message right on Sunday to everybody. Just yeah, just that it's starting. Just reminding them. Oh yeah, everybody. Well, just like it goes live to it's more just a reminder. We could just no, these are people who already paid, and so they were wanting, could we get, since we've come to the webinar, can we get a discount? So we probably have to just refund them or whatever, or credit them. Bruce, Shona, and Liz. I don't, just says Liz here. She says I'm registered too, so I'm assuming.